Good afternoon all and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. We run weekly webinars aimed to provide advice and share knowledge on key business topics and specialist areas. Joining me today is BizSmart Select member David Lynes from Unique IQ. And in today's webinar, David will be helping us understand the challenges of managing a remote workforce. David, would you like to tell us a bit more about the work that you do?
Yes, thank you, Caroline. My name is David. I run a company called Unique IQ. We're based in the Midlands, in Bromsgrove. We primarily build web applications, web systems, payment gateways, CRM solutions, and those sorts of things. So really sort of technical web solutions for other businesses in the area. We also build online applications. One of those is a product that we developed ourselves, IQ Timecard, which is one of the areas we're sort of covering today. And that really helps with remote workforces. So that's really sort of the background for this particular webinar.
Thank you, David. Before we start our webinar, can I ask you to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for David, and he will do, I'm sure, his best to answer all the questions at the end of the session for us. Okay, David, over to you.
Thank you, Caroline. Yes, this webinar is obviously entitled Optimising a Mobile Workforce. And this is something that we've got some experience in relation to, as I mentioned before, the IQ Timecard product. Just a little bit of background, that's a product for managing remote workforces. So the system itself allows, whether it's home care, security, contract cleaning, those sorts of sectors to manage their workforce, their time and attendance, and really sort of get sort of details and data that allows them to monitor the sort of workforce. Now, in terms of mobile workforces and the sort of webinar today, these are the sort of four areas that I really want to cover. So the first of all, really sort of introduction to mobile workforces, excuse me, and what they do, what are they, almost like a definition, and then really some of the challenges, so overcoming the face-to-face barriers, of the fact that people are not in the office, time and attendance, so that time tracking and finding out where people are, what time they're there, and all those sorts of issues, and then really the activity and performance tracking. So how well is somebody doing? What is their performance like? Not just whether they've kind of turned up or not. So really sort of diving into what is a mobile workforce. Really, mobile workforces have grown over the last probably 20 years or so, where more and more staff are not based at their desk or not based in an office building somewhere. Now, that can be a salesperson out on the road. It could be, in our case, home care, security, contract cleaning, those sorts of sectors where most of the workforce, 95% of the workforce, are not at the desk in an office. They're actually out doing and performing a job. And that's grown over the years, and we'll see a slide shortly that kind of shows some of those figures and some research that's been done. But also there's some data that says that 65% of business in the UK expect that 30% or more of their employees will be mobile workforces, mobile workers in the next 2 or so years. And what we're really seeing is there's an increased, with technology, there's an increased percentage of employees that are able to and want to work from home, as well as more and more, companies managing their workforce completely remotely from different locations. So whether it's internationally or whether it's nationally. And also we're seeing that there are more and more employees that want to and feel comfortable and feel productive working from home. And I know for me personally, I feel that there's certain distractions that are not there when I'm at home at my desk versus actually being in the office, amongst the team. So there's that sort of shift really with technology, with almost acceptance that working remotely is good. It is good for business, but there are some challenges to it, and it's not necessarily sort of straightforward and easy. 2 seconds. There we go. The chart we're showing here is really some data that was researched from a company called GoToMyPC, and that product is very much about remote working. But really, there was some forecast done in 2007, 2009, and really what it's showing is that remote working, whether it be the salesperson, whether it be the contract cleaner, is growing exponentially year on year, and it's set to continue. We don't anticipate any reduction in that due to new technologies coming out, faster broadband, tools and applications and systems that are becoming very reasonable and very sort of manageable to use and integrated, that allow companies to manage their workforce remotely. And one of those tools is IQ Timecard, and obviously there's a whole myriad of other tools available to help you manage whether it be one aspect or multiple aspects of a remote workforce. Like I say, really, the actual mobile workforce sort of element is multi-sector. It's across all sectors. There are very few sectors now that don't have a mobile workforce element. And so really the challenges are how do we manage those people? How do we know what they're doing and when they're doing it without it being Big Brother and those sorts of things. So we'll move on to. So next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is one of the sort of challenges, is there is a face-to-face barrier with having a remote workforce that may not come into the office in 3 months, for example. There is an issue where they don't get that face-to-face contact because they don't have a specific place of work. And that's really sort of where our experience is that contract cleaner, home care worker may not need to go to the office to perform their job. There may be some paperwork or documentation submitted, but actually their job, in the case of a home care worker, is out with clients in people's homes, those sorts of things. So there is now an issue that they don't get that face-to-face communication. And company policies and the culture may be misunderstood by not having that face-to-face contact. It's great having emails, it's great having text messages, it's great having all these communication tools that are not face-to-face. However, that can cause issues in people misunderstanding crucial issues, crucial changes to the business, or even just keeping sort of in contact with people. And also, it creates an issue that actually, okay, you might send an email out or a text message or use any communication tool, but actually you don't really get to know about the employee's well-being. How are they? Any particular issues? And it's also increasingly difficult to reinforce company culture and because you don't meet them essentially. So without having that face-to-face, you potentially start to create an issue where things can be misunderstood, and there's no connection with that employee. And so actually, that's one of the sort of issues to be aware of. And obviously, there are tools and mechanisms to help overcome that particular barrier. And some of those are, for example, setting aside catch-up meetings with employees. We as a business, we do have 2 office locations, so we do technically have a remote workforce. And so we have morning meetings, we have a huddle. And so we actually, it's very sort of quickly round the group of people that we've got. We actually kind of say, okay, so, what did we do yesterday? Any sort of impending kind of issues going forward today? And what that does, using technology, using things like Skype and cameras and those sorts of things, we can actually have that face-to-face. And it's that informal catch-up, and it's that visibility, knowing what people are doing, not tracking from a tracking point of view, but just making sure they're okay and they're sort of communicated with. And yeah, asking them whether they've got any issues and airing those. And that's what we do on a morning sort of basis at sort of 9:15. We do that. But again, with remote workforces, staff that may be away from the office for a prolonged period of times, it's important to get them to air any issues, because you've lost that connection. Emails are great, however, emails may not be, the best sort of area to put issues or problems, or maybe misinterpreted. And really allowing time to interact, to meet with that remote workforce, those employees. And so, most employees expect, mobile employees expect to have meetings face to face. They expect to be in the office, on occasions. And so therefore, because they've got that expectation, it's important to obviously embrace that. So face to face is an issue when you've got, remote workforce employees. The next area I wanted to cover was the time and attendance. Now, obviously, with time and attendance, tracking what they're doing, where they're doing it, and those sorts of things. Now, IQ Timecard is a product that does that. But it's obviously important with remote workforces to know what they're doing and where they're doing it for a number of different reasons. And so there's some sort of challenges when managing, tracking, scheduling employees that are not in the office, because again, you don't have that face to face. But you've got a multitude of different factors that kind of come into it. So there's some issues. I've put a chart here from some research again about sort of issues when scheduling employees. So holidays and meetings and training sessions. And without the kind of face-to-face, you've got, schedules potentially being unfair, and lots of different sort of issues around that. But there are a multitude of options available, software-based, to actually allow you to schedule and roster and manage, a remote workforce. And so, in terms of technology, you need to be able to have full control of that technology, and for your staff and those mobile employees to be comfortable with that particular system. By using a system, by using a tool, by using a process and a structure, you do then get full control of your remote workforce and where they should be and what time they should be there. And like I say, there's a number of benefits, and some of which I've put here. So monitoring working time regulations. So making sure in a very easy and quick way that you're abiding by those working time regulations. Staff absenteeism. So whether it's to do with performance reviews, their well-being, if there's repeat, absenteeism, then there could be an issue that's highlighted. Again, by using a system, you can spot that very, very quickly. Automated costing of hours worked, automatic invoicing, all those sorts of benefits start coming into play by using a time attendance system and tracking that time. And what we find is many companies out there that don't actually track time. They just don't know. They trust their employees, and that's great. However, they've got no provision for tracking the time, billing the time correctly, and that's one of the challenges, obviously, for companies that don't use a system or use Excel spreadsheets. We've dealt with quite a few clients that are moving away from Excel because there's just too much manual processing to get accurate data. So next one here, provision of accurate data and working hours. So that's obviously critical. If you're wanting to monitor your workforce and know how well they're doing, it's not just how many hours, but actually that is a piece of information that's critical. And also, again, minimising the risk of underpayment, overpayment, inaccurate payroll. Because again, if somebody's underpaid in a calendar month, then that will agitate employee, and they won't feel particularly comfortable or trusting of the system that's in place. So again, it's important that using time and attendance systems, there's a whole myriad of different benefits for using a system like that. So we'll just move on to activity and performance tracking. So not just time and attendance, but also using systems and thinking about the face-to-face barriers and what mobile workforces look like. It's obviously crucial to track performance in general. So it's not just about the amount of hours, where they are, what they're doing, but it's also about how well they're doing. So it's not just, as it says here, hours work does not equate to high performance. It's making sure that actually the work done is to a high performance and it's done to the best of their ability. And again, going back to the contract cleaning areas that we work with, we see it time and time again, staff are on site, however, they may not be doing the best possible job possible. And so it's not just about Big Brother, we're watching you, you've clocked in at this time and clocked out at that time. It's also about monitoring the performance, how well they're doing. And that's really through things like goal setting, reviews, improvement plans, and those sorts of areas to help you mentor and train and guide those staff to improve. What activity and performance tracking does allow you to do, and systems like IQ Timecard and others allow you to get real-time information. So it's not a case of waiting till the end of the month, running some reports and then possibly seeing an issue or a problem. It's actually been able to, in a real-time sort of environment, see data, have a look, be able to then make a change, have a discussion, have a face-to-face meeting, and possibly rectify that issue. If you've got somebody who's consistently late, then actually that issue with real-time information and real-time systems can actually help you to then see that information, make a change, and then obviously help you to manage. Now, the performance tracking, the monitoring, the time attendance is not a sort of a micromanagement type, activity. Micromanaging a mobile workforce is incredibly difficult and probably won't work. And so it's about exception management. It's about spotting problems, getting information and data out very, very quickly, even an alert, even a warning, a message or something like that to help you to see what's going wrong, make a change, and formalise that process. With technology, and I'm sort of wrapping up a little bit here. So with technology, not just kind of systems, but mobile phones and iPads and devices like that. There's a whole extra set of communication tools available to communicate with mobile workforces, to keep in touch, to obviously monitor and track, appropriately, but then really make sure that those mobile workers, those employees, those valued people are valued within the business, that they're sort of cared for, they're looked after. And again, mobile technology is great for that. However, there is that face-to-face issue where you do need to get them into the office, you do need to communicate with them. It's not all about putting a system in place, it's about caring for those people. So that's just about wraps up what I wanted to say. So any questions?
Great, thank you very much, David. Let's have a look to see if there's any questions come through. Okay. Anne would like to know how technology can help with managing her workforce.
Okay, that's good. Now, there is a lot of technology available, so not just hardware, so your mobile phones, your iPads, your tablet devices, your computers, those sorts of things. But there's also systems, so software systems, software packages that can help. Now, there's not a single product, there's not a one product fits all type scenario. So really does depend on what you're trying to achieve, and really it's looking at the business, looking at what you do need to track, if anything at all. It may be that your systems and processes in place are good already, and really doing a little bit of analysis, looking at the software available on the market at the moment, looking at potentially the hardware available on the market as well, and really testing it, finding out what works for you and what doesn't. Now, some of our clients, they have 95, 98% that is remote workforce, and we've got a solution that's low cost, that allows you to manage the workforce without any hardware using landline phones. And so actually there are software solutions out there that are a mix of that. Definitely communication tools within the team. So again, your emails, we use a system called Slack, which is a great sort of messaging tool. Really, there isn't a single product that fits all. We would sort of need to look at that workforce. But you can use technology. It is a great time saver. But there can be an overhead to it. So it's a case of trying to keep it as sensible as possible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Another question from Peter. With so much technology around, how do we know what the right tools are for us?
Okay, that's a good question, and I guess that feeds in from the previous question. In terms of right tools, again, it's hard to tell exactly, but with us and what we've seen with our client base, with IQ Timecard, it tends to be with mobile workforces, it needs to be quick, it needs to be intuitive, and needs to be very simple. They've already got a lot to do. So whether it's a home care worker or a contract cleaner, they've already got a job to function. So their focus is on that job. And in home care, their focus is on the client. It could be a medical visit. It could be to look after a particular sort of client at home. So therefore, their focus is on that. So the system needs to be quick. It needs to be easy. It needs to be foolproof every single time. And us as a business, we've worked very hard on stability and making sure that our product allows workers wherever they are in the country to clock in, clock out seamlessly, very, very quickly. And so really in terms of right tools, in terms of putting it out there, it needs to be simple, it needs to be streamlined, it needs to be quick, to make sure that it does get done, because they will buy into that. And some of our clients have been very pleased with the system, because it's very, very quick to use, as well as give you all the benefits of real-time tracking, where people are, when people get there, and exception management. So if somebody doesn't turn up, what happens? What's the escalation path? So in terms of right tools, I would say just make sure it's easy for that mobile workforce to use, that it's consistent across that mobile workforce, that you've got the same tool set. And me personally, I'd suggest one or two tools. Don't try and overcomplicate it with too many different systems. But again, it's going to depend on the company. It's going to depend on the sector. But there's a whole lot of software out there. But feel free to contact us if you want a bit of advice.
Okay, thank you. And a great follow-on question from Lorna. How would you ensure you engage the staff in integrating your product without them thinking Big Brother is watching them?
Yeah, again, that's another good question. There are benefits for both sides, and what we've seen, our clients do is present both sides of the sort of issue, if that makes sense. There's benefits to the employer, obviously, for time attendance and for whether it be invoicing and performance monitoring, those sorts of things. However, there's also some benefits to the staff as well. So areas such as making sure their pay is accurate at the end of the month. For those that are working hard or working overtime, that they are paid, fairly and accurately, and those that are not working as hard or as long, obviously their pay reflects that also. So there's also a lone worker type sort of element that comes into play. So staff safety and those sorts of issues, where by using some technology, there's actually a benefit. Making sure the staff get there on time, but also if they don't leave, our product, sends out alerts or notifications if people haven't clocked out, or in certain scenarios they can have a recheck in. So it checks that employee periodically, and if there's an issue, then it sends out a warning. So somebody's almost sort of watching their back, as well as obviously kind of looking at the sort of time they're working. So it's obviously a little bit difficult when you've got an existing workforce and you're putting in a new system. There does need to be that buy-in. But what we've seen is that those that tend to buck against the system are those that have got something to hide, because typically they're the ones that, there's a little bit of generalisation, but they're the ones that are not necessarily getting there on time, leaving on time. Those that do work hard, we've not seen any issues or any sort of non-buy-in for a system like ours. I think nowadays also technology and tracking, whether it be your phone or your sat nav and those sorts of things, is more accepted. Go back 10 years, if you said about time attendance and tracking and those sorts of things, people wouldn't like it, but it's becoming more and more accepted. That still doesn't mean there isn't an issue in trying to integrate it and sort of put that procedure in place. However, what we've seen is those that do engage with it tend to demonstrate to those that don't, that actually this is good, this is saving them time. They don't have to do a paper timesheet anymore. They can get paid accurately, and there's a whole load of sort of benefits for them to do it as well as the employer.
Great, thank you. Another question. James would like to know in your experience then, do you think that workforces will become completely remote in the future?
Again, another good question. Me personally, I don't think they will. I can't imagine a country that nobody gets into an office block or an office building and actually works completely remotely, and that we don't come and talk to each other, and we don't meet like that. I think there's a balance. I think there will be obviously more and more businesses that can work remotely, and there are all these sectors. I mean, remote workforces are not new. Remote workforces have been around for years and years and years. However, with technology, that's obviously sort of allowing more companies to work remotely. So the laptop, taking it home and working from home, is not a new concept. But me personally, I don't think that we'll all be at home, sat in our home office with our laptops and a webcam, being completely disconnected. I think technology allows us to have teams globally. We've done that in the past where we've got development teams in another country, and so it's great for that. But in my personal opinion, I don't think we'll go completely remote. I think there'll be a balance. It'll probably sort of continue to grow further, but then it'll plateau, and I think there'll be a balance between, because us as humans, I think we want to meet, we want to be in an office, we want to feel part of a team, and so I think there'll be some sort of balance.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Philippe. Do you think we need to employ people suited for remote working, or can anyone fit into this system?
Okay, that's a good one. I think looking at our workforce and the team that we've got within the business, we didn't specifically hire for them to be either in the office or not in the office. I think it's a consideration depending on, again, the sector that you're in, what remote workforce, if any, you've got currently. I think that with the suitable training, suitable implementation, and again, making sure the system is easy to use, whatever system that is, that it gives you the information you need. Anybody can be suited to remote working. Some of it is, though, going to be sort of based on personality types and how comfortable somebody feels working from home, or how productive they feel working from home. Some people don't like it. I've got a staff member that doesn't like it. Just can't concentrate at home. There's too many other distractions, and that's fine. And so I think there's going to be some that feel more comfortable working from home. I think if the business is growing and you want to consider remote working for its benefits, then that conversation in the interview process, is definitely, well, how do you feel about this, and getting their thoughts. So, but me, I wouldn't necessarily specifically hire or fire somebody for their remote working kind of sort of stance, because there are pros and cons on both sides. In the sectors that we work with IQ Timecard, most of the workforce are remote, and therefore a cleaner needs to go out. They can't be all based in the office all the time. Therefore, they've got to go out, and therefore by default are remote working. So again, depends on the sector, but typically the sectors we work with, they're hiring for that remote anyway.
Great, thank you very much. So yeah, thank you, David, for that great session. I'll be sending out a copy of David's presentation and his contact details out to you all this afternoon. So thank you again for joining us today, and I hope you can make our webinars a regular slot in your calendar every Tuesday at 12:30. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.